Hi, welcome to another Expert Insights discussion. Today we're joined by Marc Fleischer, a 20 plus year hotel veteran and one of the partners at Strategic Solution Partners. If not spending time on hotel renovation project management, Marc is conducting hotel engineering reviews, so is perfectly placed to talk about the increased focus on sustainability, its impact on hotel engineering teams, and their value in helping implement effective sustainability practices. He also doesn't hide the fact it is difficult to make changes, and it requires three core factors: investment, leadership, and a change in guest behaviour, each of which can be hard to find. Really hope you enjoy the conversation. Hi, Marc. Thanks for joining us again today. Really appreciate it. So today we're following up on a previous videos we've done with SSP partners in a series around sustainability. Today we're taking the topic of sustainability, but in the context of the engineering team, the hotel engineering team, and often not seen, but very valuable cog in the hotel wheel. Now, you are without doubt an expert in that area. Hence why you're here. And we wanted to get your perspective on a number of areas, and we wanted to just kind of condense those down into sort of five sections, so to speak, which is energy efficiency, water conservation, waste reduction, impact of maintenance programs, and then where the adoption of smart technology fits in within all of this. So let's kick off with the first one, maybe the biggest one. I don't know. We'll get your perspective on this. But energy efficiency. What are we seeing in those areas?
Well, everything's going to end up turning around, coming back to the maintenance team on site. But energy efficiency, the biggest things that can be impacted are probably like HVAC units, boilers, and things like that. But like with HVAC units, maintaining the unit will ensure that its efficiency is maximized.
Yep.
If you are not maintaining that unit, if you're not changing the filters, changing the belts, keeping an eye on it, doing routine maintenance, greasing or oiling the pulleys or whatever is involved, it's not going to operate 100%, and it's going to slowly decline. So you need to perform maintenance for your systems to, maintain and provide the operating efficiency that the manufacturer's spec book calls for.
HVAC is one area that's a pretty straightforward. I guess most properties now have HVAC, certainly any of the newer properties that are being built. But even if you don't have an HVAC system, I guess the one thing that every hotel has and everyone talks about is the lighting. And I'm deliberately going to mention this because you shared a report with me, and it's also how that lighting and where that lighting is being used. So talk to us a bit about that side of things.
Yep. Thank you so much for jogging my memory now on the report that you're talking about. So yes, I did. This was a very large resort, 600 plus rooms, world famous. I mean, everybody stayed there. They had 9 tennis courts, 2 golf courses, a spa. They also had, I think it was 18 bodies of water,
right,
including a kids' play park. And so as I walked through the property, I realized that they their timers were not set accordingly to the sun, and so the time of day. And so what I found out was they're running 500-watt light bulbs that were still that weren't changed over to LED yet, but they were running these bulbs under the water in the pools. The sun would come up at 6 a.m. The lights didn't switch off until 9 or 10 a.m. The lights would turn back on at 4 p.m. and the sun wouldn't go down until like 7 p.m. So I did a full report. I checked every body of water, all the pools, all the hot tubs, all just the the water features.
Hmm.
And I ended up counting how many bulbs were on, how long, the time of day, etc. In the difference of when they needed to be on to when they actually were on.
Yeah.
And it turned out, I think the hotel was spending, I think it was like $500 extra a month in electric
Right.
by not setting the timers on their bulbs, because you can take the energy used by the light bulb,
Hmm.
and you can find out what the cost per kilowatt hour is at in the location, and do the math and figure it out. And that's exactly what happened. And they were spending, honestly, $6,000 a year by not setting the timers
Six thousand
properly.
dollars. If they just adjusted the timers, that's straight to the bottom line.
Yeah, 6 grand. I mean, it's not a drop. I mean,
No.
yeah, this property made $100 million in revenue,
Yeah, I mean, it
but
doesn't feel.
still,
Yeah, but that's one
but
example, isn't it? That if you add all those elements up, when we
right.
talk, and I think the point that we're driving at here is you can make a big deal, the big press release. We're getting rid of
Mhm.
plastic straws, and that looks great, but then you're
Yep.
burning 6 grand's worth of cash. But
Yep.
that's 6 grand's worth of energy that you're consuming at a point where we're all
Yeah.
being told to reduce our energy consumption. It's
Well,
it's so much bigger than just the headline, isn't it?
the bigger, so this story is actually going to get bigger when I tell you this, is that not only was it just the bodies of water, but it was their exterior lights also.
Right.
They had lights all around the buildings that were still on during the day. So, entrance lights to a building, pole lights, lights that lit up the trees, and I did all the math. But the biggest problem with this was California, and we've all seen in the news they have rolling brownouts because they use too much electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So this resort was using so much more
Contributing to
electricity,
that.
and thousands and thousands of dollars a year. But they're part of the problem of why Joe homeowner down the street, it has a brownout because somebody else is using too much electricity in the summer and they can't even keep their air conditioning on.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, and that's the bigger point, isn't it? It's easy sometimes to look at
Mm-hmm.
it just from a financial, but it's like, hold on a minute. We all live and exist in here. We all have,
Mm-hmm.
we're all changing our bulbs or trying to reduce what we're consuming, and yet, you walk around and you see lights on in car parks during the day. It's
Yeah.
like, what on earth do you need a light on in a car park at broad
Yeah.
daylight for? It's just crazy, absolutely
It
daft.
is. It's a waste of money.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody, you know, the owner of that hotel and the management company, the people that are making money off of this are losing easy money. It's like dropping money out of your pocket. I mean, it's easy money. But like I said, because it was California and we know they have an energy problem out there, they've talked about it on the news, a rolling brownout because they can't sustain all the houses in the area, or
Yeah.
the can't sustain everything. So this resort is adding to that issue.
Contributing to that problem. Yeah, yeah, yeah. On the topic of utilizing energy, where does renewable energy sit? What's the current thinking, or what are you seeing in terms of hotels incorporating, not just going to energy providers that have renewable energy, but actually looking at, converting certain areas of their properties where maybe you could be putting solar panels on so that you're actually utilizing some, maybe if it allows, wind turbines, or some kind of renewable element that exists on property. You seeing anything like that?
Not so much at hotels.
Hmm.
I've seen. There are some hotels that I haven't visited them personally. I've read about them,
Yeah.
but that's more of a. I've seen little towns that have done it. I've seen
Okay. Yep.
neighborhoods. I've seen what's the word I'm looking for? Um, Communities, little communities. Like
Yeah.
I drove past one in Florida not too long ago where the whole community is renewable energy, use
Hmm.
renewable energy.
Hmm.
And so yes, I've seen it more like that. There are some challenges with it, but I haven't seen it so much for hotels. I haven't seen any hotels with a solar panel on their roof.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. I mean, I was wondering if with new builds, I mean, you would have. I guess there's specifications that they have to comply with to be more energy efficient, but
Mhm.
a lot of times when you see these overhead shots of cityscapes, you see these massive rooftops that have huge aircon units often on the top of it, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of open space that you think, well, surely solar panels could be put in there to it, even if it doesn't fulfill the whole requirement. If again, to
Right.
your point about this in California, if it's just reducing the amount of energy consumption this hotel is using because it's partly providing its own consumption, you would have thought that would seem a sensible thing.
Like I said, I've seen a couple of things I've read about or seen it pop up on my email from some place that is LEED
Hmm.
certified and a
Hmm.
new property and a new build. Yes. I think part of that is um, I don't know if it makes sense for regular hotels to do that. I just don't know.
It comes down
There's a
to money,
lot of
doesn't it? At the
it
end of the
comes
day.
down to money, and that's yeah. I kind of want to just blurt that out, but I didn't. But
I'll say
it yeah, you know, there are certain things if I was to build a hotel, what I would want to do, but it comes down to the money to be able to do that.
it.
And so I don't think everybody's thinking about that. Most people are building a hotel, they build it, they're going to keep it for a few years and they're going to turn it over. It's just a property at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, especially the bigger companies, they're building, they're buying, building, and flipping and selling it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that seems better.
Somebody once told me that the shorter time you hold on to a hotel, the more money you make out of it.
Right. Okay, that's a shame. Then we'll move on from that one. It would have been nice if they were had to be specified with solar panels on the roof to at least help. But there we go. Okay, let's go to the second area where we're looking at things like water conservation, water management, grey water systems. What are you seeing in that space?
Yeah, that's actually a better one. Everybody's using the low flow shower heads or low
Hmm.
flow, sink adapters or whatever. They're keeping an eye on that. At the end of the day, it comes down to the guest using what they have.
Yep.
We can do everything we want. We can, and I do agree with the low flow shower heads. I have them in my house.
Yep.
Um, and I think that's a great idea, but at the end of the day it comes down to education and the guest. And people, we know this for a fact because there have been lots of surveys. There's the newer generation that wants to come to a hotel and be like, oh yes, they're energy efficient, they have this, this is great, we're staying here because they recycle and they
Yep.
do this and they do this, and we want to stay here because of that. But then they go in and take a shower. And since they're not at home, they take a hot shower for 25 minutes.
Yeah,
Or
luxuriate. Have a bath if there's a bath still there.
and so yes, they take a bath, they take a shower, they do this, they because they're away from home. And so those two things don't add up,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or they brush their teeth or shave and they're running the water and it's just constantly running.
Thinking about water conservation, water usage, when we're thinking about these resorts
Mm-hmm.
where, they've got irrigation systems because they've obviously got to look
Yep.
lush, obviously. Has there been evolution in that area? I mean, are we still seeing people, the jets are pointing on the grass and not on the car park, that they're not going off at 12 o'clock midday when it's hot sun and it's being done cooler evenings? What's going
So
on those points?
So same thing, and I see it a lot in Florida. I see it. I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it all across the country. Is that it could be 2 o'clock in the afternoon and the sun is out, and I see the sprinklers going off, and the other part of the sprinkler is half of them are pointing towards the to the parking lot, and
Yeah.
they're not even blowing in this right direction. But yes, that's a big one also. So I've seen it, like I said, all across the country. Timers. It comes down to timers again.
Yeah.
My own yard, I when I had an in-ground sprinkler system, my new yard I don't because I'm on a well, but my old yard, I would set the sprinklers for about 15 minutes per zone, and I would do that at like 3 o'clock in the morning because
Yeah.
when I got up at 5, I wanted it to be done.
Yeah.
And so I would do that but I wouldn't do it during the day. So yes,
Well, it's not going to get evaporated then. Otherwise, you're having to
exactly.
yeah.
And you're not going to burn it.
Yeah.
If the sun is out and it's, 100 degrees and you're hit it with water, you can burn your grass. And so same thing. Yep. I see it all the time with broken sprinkler heads where it's just bubbling and
Yeah. Yeah.
creating a
Yeah.
pond,
Yeah.
running down the sidewalk. I see them spraying the sidewalks because they're not aimed properly. It comes down to, once again, maintenance,
Yeah.
ensuring that walking their property and ensuring that the sprinklers are going at the right time, at the right locations, and they're maintained properly. Uh, happens every day.
Too often, unfortunately. Grey water systems, I've heard a bit about, but I guess we're almost back to that same challenge around solar panels and things like this, that they're a good idea, there would be value to it, but am I right to think if it's not built into the cost when you're building to do a retrofit of something could either A, be too challenging or B, just quite expensive, or is that too simplistic?
You'd have to have some type of plant to be able to do that, but yes, it would go into the initial cost. Rainwater, for instance, I mean, it's not like you're going to maintain a lawn with it. You might
No.
maintain, there are some hotels and you can see something where they do a rooftop garden,
Okay.
maybe
Yeah.
in New York or LA or Chicago or something, a
Yeah.
bigger city. There's an executive chef that's, has
Yeah.
one
Local
Michelin
produce or something.
star
Yeah.
or James Beard Award winner or something, and he's maintaining this garden on the roof with his own beehive.
Yeah.
I can understand them doing that.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you would sprinkle, lawn sprinklers for rainwater. It
No.
just would be gone in a minute.
Yeah. And as you say, and then for the grey water scenario of actually looking at treating and reusing
Mm-hmm.
the water that is, so if at least if someone's running the tap while they're having a shower or cleaning their
Right.
teeth or shaving, if there was a plant to then reutilize that, then that's a bit self sufficient. But as you say, that's that investment that's needed again, isn't it?
Right, because you have to clean the water, and then you would have to also, because that drain water ends up going to the same wastewater that your toilet goes into.
Right. Okay.
So you would
Okay.
have to have
Wow.
two
Right.
separate systems
Yeah.
because nobody's going to be able to clean toilet water.
No.
And so yes, it sounds like a great idea, but it's really difficult.
Technology is fine, but again, technology has a cost.
Mhm.
Technology is okay, but technology has to be maintained. It also has to be identified. What are we investing in this technology for? And do the people that are going to be using it know how to use it properly? So if we step away from everything that we're talking about requires investing money, and actually we look and say, how could your property make a difference in 1 week, for instance,
Mhm.
then I know you're very passionate about having regular inspections, walk around, maintenance, because you believe that's where you learn about your property. That's where you
Yes.
identify things. That's where you can make changes. So, as a kind of wrapping up this conversation and the final point, let's talk about that and what you're really passionate about in those areas.
Yep. Yeah, this is my favorite topic, and this. You know, there's nothing more important than walking your property.
Mhm.
Nothing more important. Walking and paying attention to everything that happens in your hotel. And it's funny, when we talked about it last time, I realized, oh my God, I was doing conservation 20 years ago. But it was under energy savings.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
was just
yeah. That's
same
just what you
thing,
did. Yeah.
different. And so what I did, that spreadsheet was for, going to all the linen closets and all the storage rooms and ensuring the lights were off,
Yeah.
going into the meeting rooms late at night and making sure all the lights were off, going into the meeting rooms and the public spaces and making sure all the air conditioning HVAC systems were set accordingly,
Hmm.
whether it was, 68 degrees for heat in the winter or 72 degrees for cooling in the summer.
Hmm.
Whatever it was, I had a checklist for engineers to go through. I also had a checklist to check the exterior lighting,
Hmm.
check the interior lighting, check all these things. Same thing with the pool. Make sure all these things work. Make sure things went off when they were supposed to or turned on when they were supposed to.
Hmm.
And so the human element is number one. That's
Yeah.
the first thing. Um, I believe strongly in checklists. Um, Even working the front desk or whatever, what have you. Um, you can work the front desk and been there for 10 years, but if you don't have your checklist in front of you, there is a possibility that you could miss something.
Hmm.
um, and so I think it's extremely important that you have some way of ensuring you go step by step and doing everything you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
A lot of us that aren't in the hotel now, you have a list. I'm sure you have a list of things that you need to do today.
Hmm.
And so you'll check everything off.
Yeah.
Same thing working in the hotel, whether it's engineering or the front desk or housekeeping or whatever department you're in. You should have some way of some structure. There has to be some way of tracking everything you do. And
Hmm.
so, like I said, I used to do all that. I'd walk the building. I created the spreadsheets, turn the lights on, turn the lights off, set the thermostats the way it's supposed to be. But it's so important. It's so important to walk the property. It really is. There's nothing more important than that.
Yeah. And as you say, having a checklist is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing what you want to check, why you want to check it, the frequency of
Yep.
checking it, so it becomes a repetitive process. So
Right.
everyone talks back to what you were saying before about maintenance is like looking after our body. We do things regularly because
Mm-hmm.
that's what keeps us ticking over. Because it's prevention rather than cure, isn't it? It's more cost effective in a lot of instances to be walking around and making small repairs than missing it and ending up with a much more costly repair.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, if I give myself a shameless plug here, something I do is called a property maintenance assessment.
Hmm.
And hotel owners or management companies will hire me to go to their hotel and do a full review of the engineering program.
Hmm.
Now, that covers engineering, it covers the exterior, it covers the roof, it covers back of house, front of house, guest rooms. I do a full walkthrough.
Hmm.
Depending upon the size of the hotel, it could be a day, 2 days, 3 days. One hotel I spent 2 weeks at
Hmm.
because, I go back to that resort. It was 600 plus
Yeah,
rooms and it
just
was
the size of it.
enormous.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but typically, let's say it's a couple of days, and I will create a full report with pictures of every single thing about that hotel, things that the engineer is doing or should be doing, things that other people should be doing or aren't doing or what have you. I will walk the hotel at night and tell you if your lights are on, or
Mm.
I will walk the hotel in the morning. I will walk it at all different times of the day, go through different rooms, and I'll do a full report, and I'll report back everything that I find in that hotel.
Hmm.
Sometimes the report might be 5 pages, sometimes the report might be 15 pages. It
Yeah.
depends how much I find.
Hmm.
I've used this many times before, and I've never had anybody tell me anything but exceptional things about my report and how detailed it is and the things that they find, and they work off of it to fix their issues. With all that being said, it comes down. Yes, there's a huge issue since the pandemic. Um, and it's not it's very difficult. So I see a lot of general managers that are still working the front desk. They don't have the same staff. Staffing has dropped considerably.
Hmm.
A lot of people got out of the hospitality industry because it became very difficult. The hours were insane. Yes, I see a lot more GMs that are working 40 hours a week instead of 60 hours a week, which is great,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
at the
No
same
one's.
time, they are working the front desk and doing reports. And I've had almost everyone I've talked to don't have enough time to walk their property efficiently.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's a big problem. You have to walk the property. Somebody has to do it. And you said, without blaming somebody, it takes three people.
Yeah.
Your engineer has to walk the property. Your GM has to follow up and ensure they're walking the property, and the GM has to walk their property also.
Yeah.
In your VP, whoever the VP of operations has to ensure that's happening. It goes all the way up the chain. But I mean, those are the three first people. It should come from your leadership. The president of your company should make this happen.
I think you're right.
You know,
It has to. You're right. It has to come from the top. And a lot of these initiatives, when we're talking back to our original starting point around sustainability, you hear all of these leaders talk about it. But
right.
do the practices follow all the way down that mean that the people who are responsible for actually doing this are clear that it needs to be done and why it needs to be done? Or are we relying on people in their roles who are just conscientious, who are mindful of the world that we live in, and just decide to take things on for themselves? That you can. There's a human element in this that can be positive or can be negative. But that's for another discussion. For now, I'm very, very conscious of your time.
No. I have one other quick story. It's kind of funny. It was a little sarcastic. It was funny. So, and I go back a long time with this GM. I've known him for a long time, and we've always had a good relationship. And so I saw him, a couple months ago, and he was, we were talking, and he said, the top of his shoe, he showed me the top of his shoe had a little mark in there from him tapping his desk. And his shoe was wearing out on the top, where the top of the toes.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, I said, my shoes always wore out on the bottom from walking my property.
Yeah.
And he just looked at me like, like his shoes worn out at the top from touching his desk because he's at he's always working
at his desk. Yeah,
he's writing reports. Yeah. And I said, yeah, mine worked out, wore out on the soles because I would be out walking my hotel. So that's the big difference between today and when I was a GM.
Yeah, that is a big difference. You would always hope the GM would be out, even if they're just interacting with guests. I mean, for goodness sake.
I mean, it was a little dig, but it's true.
It made a point. Yeah.
It's true. It's different. They have their desk chairs wear out a lot quicker than mine did.
Yeah. That's a good story to end it on. Look, we always appreciate talking with you. Always appreciate your insights and time. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, sir.
Well, I hope that conversation was of interest, and thanks again to Marc for joining us. If you have any thoughts or views on this conversation, please feel free to comment below. If you like the discussion, please don't forget a thumbs up. And if you're interested in more of our videos, here is a link to our Expert Insights playlist, and here is a link to our Coffee Time Chat playlist. And here is the button if you'd like to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks again for watching.